Today we're going to be looking at how to find the domain and range given different sets of materials such as a set of ordered pairs, a graph, and a mapping diagram. First we're going to start with just a set of numbers. Set of ordered pairs given in set notation based on the fancy brackets. So domain is all of the x values, and range is the y values. Now they always go in order. Domain's always before range, just like x is always before y. It's just alphabetical order. So if you're given a set of ordered pairs and you're asked to state the domain and range, what you would do is give the domain and the range in set notation. Now that means that you would write D, colon, little fancy bracket, and then you'd list all of the x values. So we have 0, -1, 1, and 2, and you can just go ahead and put them in order. So it'd be -1, 0, 1, and 2. And then you would close that set of brackets. That would be your domain for this set. Range, same deal, except we're looking at the y values. So 3, 4, 3 is shown again, so you don't have to write it down twice, you just write it once. So 3, 4, and 6. So this is the domain and range of this set of ordered pairs. Next, we're going to look at the graph. It says state the domain and range as well. When you're given a graph, students sometimes feel a little iffy on how to really figure out what the domain and range is. If it helps to think of it as flashlights and shadows. So if I wanted to find the domain, I know that I'm looking at the x values, so I'm looking at this line. Okay? And if I were to put a flashlight at the bottom of the graph, and at the top of the graph, if I shine those lights, they should hit this line. Now, wherever the light hits, that's not domain. Wherever a shadow falls, then that would be domain. So let's start from the top. If I shine the light down on this graph, it's going to hit all of this green line. From the top though, if I look at the X line, this top flashlight will hit this X line. So there's going to be some light there. It's not going to be shadow. It'd be light from the top. There'd also be light over here if I'm looking from the top as well, because there's nothing to block that light from hitting this X line. If I look in the middle though, this curve keeps this light from hitting this piece of the line. So I know that there's going to be some shadow there, which means part of my domain is in this area. Let's look from the bottom. From the bottom, if I'm looking just straight up, this flashlight will hit. So the domain wouldn't be from the bottom light in this area. If I look at the sides, you have to think about where this stops. Light will shine all through here, but, and I'll bring that up, but this line stops the light from hitting this area, which would make a shadow right there on that X line. Because there's light all the way here, but this line of the graph stops the light from hitting the x-axis right here. Same deal over here. On this side, the light would not be able to go through here, causing a shadow on that side of the x line. The light would be able though to hit all of this because the line stops here and doesn't continue. if the line continued forever and ever and ever, then this whole line would be shadow, and there wouldn't be any light able to get through. So what we have is shadow from -3 to +2. And since shadow hits from -3 to +2, that is what our domain is. From -3 to +2. The only thing here is you have to look at the dots. This dot is filled in, this dot is open. So that means when you write this interval notation or this set notation for the domain, you have to put a hard bracket and not a parenthesis on that -3 because of this closed dot. Okay, let's take a look at range. Domain -3, column 2. All right. So range. Range is the same deal. We're going to use flashlights instead of looking at the x-axis, though we're concerned with the y-axis because, again, range deals with y values. So we're concerned with the y line. So I'm going to put my flashlights where they're able to hit the y line, which would be on the left and right side. So if I'm looking at the left side first, I shine my light, it's going through, it's definitely gonna hit from here up. From here up is gonna be light, no doubt. Okay, light will also hit from this point down because the graph stops from continuing right here at this point. So light will definitely hit this side of the line. But it'll stop about here. If I'm looking at the middle, this light will be stopped by this curve, creating a shadow on the line that goes all the way to here. So all of this is going to be shadow, because this curve of the line stops this light from passing through. If I look at the right side, light's still going to hit this Y line right here because there's nothing to stop it. It does get stopped though by this curve, and this curve extends all the way to here. So from here on there should also be shadow. Which means that the range of this graph goes from this point -5 all the way up to +2. So range from -5 to +2. Okay, we're going to take a look at another graph. We're still just stating the domain and range. Again, domain deals with the x values and range is the y values. So domain. We're going to put the flashlights at the top and bottom. And again, because domain deals with x values, we're concerned about where the shadow falls on the x-axis. Well, if I start from the bottom, the flashlight's going to hit every single piece along this line. There's not one spot that won't get touched by light. So this bottom flashlight doesn't really matter. So look at the top flashlight. If I shine my light down onto this graph, shadow will fall the entire length of that x-axis because these lines extend out forever and ever and ever because of these arrows on either end. So I know that there's going to be shadow all the way along this x-axis, and because of these arrows, it extends out from -infinity all the way to +infinity. So that's going to be my domain. negative infinity to positive infinity. Let's look at range. And again, range deals with the y values. So I'm going to put the flashlights on the left and right side. Well, on this side, this line is going to stop the light from hitting this part of that line. There's no light that's going to be able to get through because it's going to be deflected by this line. Same thing on this side. This line is not going to let any light through on this side. So that means that there's shadow all the way along this line until you hit the bottom of that graph. This bottom piece, though, is definitely going to get covered in light because there's nothing to stop it from hitting this part of the y-axis. So that means the shadow is going to fall from 0 to 5, except again, the arrows mean that this graph extends forever and ever and ever, not just out, but up as well. So instead of 5, this becomes positive infinity. So our range is going to be from 0 to positive infinity. Lastly, we have a mapping diagram. And all it wants is the domain and range. It doesn't want to know if it's a function. It just says state the domain and range. So that's what we're going to do. Domain is the x values that correspond to the range or the y values. So domain is going to be 0, 1, 3, and 6. And then range is going to be 2, 3, 7, 9. And that's as simple as that. So we covered how to find the domain and range given 3 different sets or 3 different types of information.